What is going on, guys? Blink here, back with a new guide. I'll be talking about ways to help you play better early game. Also, the V-Bucks giveaway is still going on, so make sure to visit the link in the description to enter. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications as I post an Amazon gift card code in the comments every time I upload. By turning on notifications, you'll have a way better chance of getting here first and redeeming that code. Anyways, guys, let's get to the guide. The first person with the gun will have a better chance of killing a player, and you want that to be you. So let's talk about ways you can improve your chances of getting the first weapon. Now, the first thing we will talk about will be proper glide pathways, so you can be the first one to land. So if you're heading for a house, then memorize the location your glider needs to be automatically pulled in order to be the first one on the roof or to the door. Now, yes, the battle bus doesn't take the same pathway every game. It switches it up, but there's only a few ways it can go, which means you can still guesstimate how low you have to be. You do this by memorizing objects that you glide around to help you get the best positioning. So for example, if your glider automatically deploys right before a certain tree and it gets you to where you need to be, then memorize that tree location and make sure your glider deploys right before that tree. So you got one object. Now figure out a few more objects around your target and memorize how close your glider should auto deploy. One more thing you might ask is, how can I do this with so many places on the map? Well, you choose 2 to 3 places you enjoy landing at the most and memorize the pathways for them. Those 3 places you memorize glider positioning will be the 3 places you'll have a better chance of surviving early game, because having faster landings means you get the weapons first and potentially run into players with no weapons. Now, since we're talking about memorizing areas, how about I expand on a few more reasons why you should be memorizing? Memorizing the weapon spawns in areas you land at will allow you to find weapons as soon as you can, especially in areas that are more rural, like shifty shafts. The loot is scattered in random spots, but it's always consistent. 90% of the time you see loot in a certain corner, you'll find it another time in the same spot the next game. Alright, so if you find some meds instead of a weapon, then you know which way you should be moving to find the next item spawn. And if you find no weapon, then maybe there's a chest right beside you that you know about because you know the location. Fortnite has a lot of secret chest locations, and if you can memorize the locations, you'll have such a better chance of surviving. Especially in shifty shafts, you have to break the wood pieces down to find chests. Just a lot of surprising spots chests can be at. Knowing the areas you're around will give you a big advantage, so remember to memorize glide pathways and weapon spawns at your favorite places to land. Now, what if you're late at landing and every house looks like it's being looted? Well, you run. Me and my teammate landed late and just knew we had no chance to loot in the area, so we made a run for it before any opponents spotted us. We looted a house kinda close and now had weapons to fight, and we spotted a few players in the distance and ended up killing them both. Had more loot and were comfortable enough to go back to Salty Springs to finish off the last team there. Because we made these decisions, it led us to a victory in the end. Making the right decision is very important. When you know you landed late, then sometimes the best thing you can do is back away as soon as possible. There was a player that made it into the back of the house before me, and by the time I got to the front, I knew he could have already had a weapon, so I was heading to the house across the street, which an opponent just appeared from above. At that moment, I knew it wasn't worth checking the other houses because the potential players already looting them. We had to make a run for it and loot elsewhere, and it ended up working out in the end. So remember to make the right decisions quickly, as it can save you in the end. The next tip I want to give you guys, if you see a shotgun in an open loot area as you glide down, then try grabbing it instead of an AR. The reason for this is because you'll end up being in a pretty close proximity around your opponent's early game, and the damage and tracking will be a lot easier when using a shotgun. Now, if you're in an area with a bunch of houses, then obviously it's going to be a lot harder to spot a shotgun. But if you move inside the house and you find a shotgun and an AR, use that shotgun when fighting inside houses, because the damage and the tracking is a plus, especially inside an enclosed area. Now, what about more open areas like shifty shafts? And I'll explain why shotguns are still good. Shifty is still a pretty enclosed area, especially down below, but from above, maybe not so much, which is why I've talked about this in so many of my videos, is to gather materials as soon as you can. Start whacking away at random objects once you find your first weapon. Having a pistol and 100 wood is better than having a rocket launcher and no wood, because you're able to use the cover you build to peek in and out while only exposing part of your body. You can also use it to block shots heading towards you. So gather materials as you find weapons. Having materials will change your early game drastically, and is probably one of the most important tips early game. You have your shotgun and materials, now you build cover as you get closer to your opponent. You can control your fights the way you want with the materials you have. So since we're talking about controlling fights, then how would you go about doing that inside houses? Well, I've created an in-depth house guide not too long ago, so check it out as it has a lot of great house tips. But I'll briefly explain a material tip useful inside houses. Placing a floor on the stairs will block any opponents from pushing you by surprise. You can edit the floor as soon as an opponent pulls out his pickaxe to destroy your floor. Most players won't expect this, and you'll catch your opponents with their pickaxes out. You can also destroy walls and replace them with yours, then edit a window to peek from. 2 great methods to utilize early game. I explain many more in my house guide, so check it out after this guide. Another tip targeted around houses is to use the roofs to spot players. After finding your weapons and gathering materials, you have to fight, and a great tactic tactic is to get on the roof of a house to spot players. You can use a third person peeking to spot and they won't even be able to see you. This is why the high ground is so important in most situations. Pre-line up your shot and do some damage. Now you can get closer towards your opponent with the materials you have and finish them. This is how I win most of my early game fights. I'll hold that high ground to get some easy shots on my opponents. So build above your opponent if you can. It'll make the fights a lot easier. All these methods can be applied in duos or squads too. Now I'll give you guys a tip focused on when playing with teammates. So in duos and squads, the first is to stick together. You want to be in close proximity at all times because he's your teammate, which makes sense, right? But what most players forget to do is stick together as soon as they land. By sticking together, you have a way better chance of clearing the area. When you're both together, that's double the firepower. And why I say this is because a lot of your opponents will not stick together, which results in you guys fighting a 2 versus 1, which means a better chance of winning the fight. You can apply this in squads too. Now, all 4 of you don't have to stick together. Anywhere you are, try to stick in groups of about 2. Works just as well as it does in duos. Well guys, that's it for this guide. Hopefully this guide can help some of you out, and a like and a sub would be greatly appreciated as it does help me out a lot. Anyways guys, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day or night, and I'll see you on the next one.